Right, we're doing an update of the read-along Crime and Punishment. So we're covering chapters 2 and 3. I didn't do an update at the end of chapter 2, so we're going to cover both chapters today. As I record this, we've just started reading chapter 4, so we're into that week. So if you want to catch up, you've got plenty of time. If you want to join in with the read-along, you'll get a link down below in the description to the read-along over on the story graph. And you can pick up any translation you like. Doesn't really matter which one you choose. They're all different. They're all good. Some are better than others. And some are better than others on certain things and less good than others on other things. That's kind of what this project is supposed to be about. Or actually, let me rewind a wee bit. It's supposed to be about me reading it in Russian because my Russian was very rusty, and this is a way of getting the story into my head at a deep level and therefore moving my Russian along a wee bit and hopefully building it up to a level that, I don't know, building it up, let's just say that. So these chapters are short. In fact, all the chapters are quite short. Chapter 2 has a very distinct part of the story, as does chapter 3. If you haven't read up to the end of chapter 3, and there's going to be spoilers, I'm assuming that if you followed along this far, you're familiar with the story. And it was published in 1866, so, you know, it's been out there a long time. So just with that said, let's crack on with chapter 2. So we're introduced to a new character, Marmeladov. Raskolnikov goes down into the bar, or the pub, or the pot house. It's called different things in different translations. The tavern, that's another one. And it stinks. It's very hot, it's very sweaty. And he feels drawn to the tavern despite the fact that he's never been in a tavern before. Interesting, huh? And he goes down and he meets Marmeladov, a civil servant, or a former civil servant, who's drowning his sorrows at the bar. He's clearly very drunk. And here we have one of the famous Dostoevskian monologues. But before we get to that, I'm going to take a look at two passages that jumped out at me. And if you'd like to read how these are translated in all of the 7 translations, they're in the spreadsheet. There's a link below, so you can go and check that out and see how the different translators have dealt with this particular passage. But it's something that jumped out at me. It wasn't because of the language so much as the story and the psychology. And it was about Raskolnikov feeling an urge for human connection. And that's something I felt. It's something that we're going to go into a bit of alcoholism here because that's my background. I fear human connection on some level, but I also crave it. It's a bit of a weird dichotomy. And I've now been sober for 18 years, and I've been doing a lot of work, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. And I've come to understand that when I used to drink, that would get rid of the fear that would make me afraid of connecting with other people. And that connecting with other people is something that I deeply, deeply want to do. I think we all do. I think we all need it. We all crave it. We all strive for it. But life can get in the way. Ego gets in the way. I think this is what Dostoevsky covers so well. So we get that scene where Raskolnikov's talking about craving human connection. So let's have a look. It says, this is from the Macduff translation, which I'm just picking at random because it's the one that's on my screen. Now, however, he had a sudden longing for company. Something new seemed to be accomplishing itself within him. And one of the things that went with it was a kind of craving for people. So tired was he after a whole month of concentrated depression and gloomy excitement that he wanted, if only for a single moment, to get his breath back in another environment, no matter what it was, and, in spite of all the filth of his surroundings, he was now content to stay on sitting in the drinking den. So he's gone into this drinking den because he's craving human connection. He's been devoid of that for quite a long time, sitting in his garret or his cupboard, or however the translators have rendered his very small room that he rents. And depression has sneaked in. And he just wants connection. So he's gone down into the tavern. He's met Marmaladov. Marmaladov has singled him out and said to him, "Would you mind if I sat down and we had a chat?" And at that point, this is where the psychology completely changes. Listen to this. In spite of his recent momentary desire for any kind of contact with people, he felt his customary irritable and unpleasant sense of revulsion towards any stranger who touched or merely attempted to touch his personal individuality. So, as soon as the opportunity arises for connection, his psychology switches and he's back to that "no, leave me alone" kind of thing, which I can relate to, and it's something I'm working on. Let me read that translation in another. This is the second part that I just read out. This one's from the Oliver Reedy translation. Despite his recent pang of desire for human company of any kind, the very first word addressed to him in reality instantly elicited his usual unpleasant and irritable feeling of disgust towards any stranger who came into contact with him or showed the slightest wish to do so. So you see, well, that's another translation. There are 7. So you can check how each translator's dealt with that passage. That's the passage from chapter 2 that stood out to me above all others. So now we're going to take a look at some differences in translation. So we have an exclamation, "Zabavnik." This is what the landlord shouts out as Marmaladov is in the midst of his soliloquy. It's translated as "Funny Fellow" by Constance Garnett, "Funny Man" by David Macduff, "Funny Man Again" by Pevere and Volokonsky, "A Right Entertainer" by Oliver Reedy, "Hey Joker" from Pasternak Slater, "What an Amusing Fellow" Michael R. Katz, and "Hey Funny Fellow" Roger Cockrell. Just an example of how different translators have dealt with that. And in this particular piece of text or dialogue, the Russian has got some kind of slang influences. So it's interesting to see how the translators have dealt with that by using yer instead of your, ain't instead of isn't, contractions with apostrophes. Some have not chosen to go with slang, but have just chosen a more informal style. And "why don't you work? Why don't you serve since you're an official?" That's Pevere and Volokonsky. So it's little translation things like that that really fascinate me, because there are so many choices, limitless choices in fact, when you're dealing with someone else's artistic expression. There's a bit of science involved in the translation, and there's a lot of artistic choice. So that's why when I say pick a translation, it comes down to personal taste to a large extent. Right, there are some longer pieces of text that I've included in the spreadsheet that you can take a look at. There's another short one, "Malyavachka te edakaya." This is when Marmaladov is talking about when he got a job as a civil servant, and when he got his job back as a civil servant after having lost it. And his wife is she's really pleased. She makes him beef and horseradish. She gives him cream for his breakfast, and she says to him, "Malyavachka te edakaya." That's translated in different ways. "My little poppet," "my little minnow," "you sweet thing," My clever boy, what a treasure you are. You're such a sweetie. You're such a sweetie pie. So that's the translations going forward in time of publication. You can look it up and see who the translator was in each instance. And we have another short instance like that of 3 words that are used as exclamations. This is when the barkeeper, or when Marmeladov is getting to stage in his monologue where some of the bystanders shout out at him, "Oi!" You know, this is what they say. Rasudil zavralsa, chinovnik. So that's the Russian, and this is translated as, that's his notion. Talked himself silly. A fine clerk he is. Got it all worked out, has he? What a load of tripe. Quill driver. Nice reasoning. Blather. A real official. Pull the other one. Load of cobblers. Bureaucrat. What a speech. What a load of rubbish. Pen pusher. Know-it-all. Damned liar. Bureaucrat. Thinks he's clever, does he? Tell us another one. Some civil servant. So, yeah, they must have had fun with that. And I would imagine that whoever has gone last, which is Roger Cockrell, this guy, he's had the benefit of being able to look back through all the other translations and the ones that I haven't covered here, because there are other ones. And I suppose then he's maybe looked at them and then come up with his choice. Don't know. Might be helpful for someone like Pevir and Volokonsky, who have a native Russian speaker on the team, someone who can maybe understand the culture a little better. Pasternak Slater, I'm sure, would also have access to that kind of research and cultural knowledge. So it's fascinating, isn't it? There's just one more that I'd written out, which is to do with the yellow ticket, or the zolty billet that Sonia carries around with her as a prostitute, basically. And the translations all have footnotes that explain what the zolty billet is at the point of translation. So some of them have called it a yellow ticket, some of them have called it a passport, some of them have called it both things, where in the Russian it's just the one word. They all have footnotes, as I said. The most comprehensive footnotes are from Pasternak Slater in the Oxford World Classics edition. And for chapter 2, I think that was probably my favourite translation, just because of the depth that he goes into in the footnotes. I find that extremely helpful. Some people don't like to have to refer to footnotes, but I think when you're reading classic literature, it's helpful in any language, but particularly when it's a translation, and then it's classic literature with that added complexity. So it really helps, I find. So the more comprehensive they are, I find the more useful they are, and they don't annoy me. I don't mind skipping to read, come back, or maybe read the footnotes first, then the chapter, or the other way around. There's all kinds of ways you can do it. So we've got, the yellow ticket, followed by yellow passport. That's Constance Garnett. Macduff, yellow card, followed by yellow card. So in the same paragraph it's referred to twice. Pevir and Volokonsky, yellow pass, yellow pass. Oliver Reedy, yellow ticket, yellow ticket. Pasternak Slater, yellow ticket, yellow ticket. Michael Katz, yellow ticket. And then he hasn't translated it again. He's put in a parenthetical, or what's the word, parenthetical? He's paraphrased it, and he's put, so first time, streetwalkers, yellow ticket. So already there's a qualifying possessive. And then it goes on to say, my daughter makes her living by street walking, sir. So he's avoided repeating the yellow ticket and instead going on with an explanation. Roger Cockrell, yellow ticket followed by yellow passport. So he's gone with 2 different nouns to describe the zolty billet in Russian. So it's fascinating. And to move on to the story aspect, the story moves along. We get the monologue from Marmeladov. It's quite erudite, although he's drunk. His language indicates a level of education and a level of knowledge of the Bible. There are many instances of references to the Bible in his monologue, and again, some of the footnotes refer to it more than others. If you have a knowledge of the Bible, you'll probably notice, but the footnotes really helped me because I didn't. And also Benjamin McAvoy's lectures at Hardcore Literature also helped me because I'm a member of his book club, which is I recommend it to you all if this is the kind of stuff you love. Benjamin McAvoy's your guy. Right, that's the end of chapter 2. So we leave it when they return to Marmeladov's home, and he gets a bit of a beating down from his wife for having ran off with the remainder of the money that he earned during his brief spell when he had a job. And Raskolnikov leaves them some change after getting called out by Marmeladov's wife for being a drinking companion. So he gets called out by Marmeladov's wife and then leaves, but before he does, he leaves some kopecks on the windowsill and then regrets it, but then he thinks, I can't go back now, it's too late. So that's where we leave him. We're going on to chapter 3 now. Perhaps I'll cut this here and we'll do another video for that. So thanks for watching thus far. I'm going to record it right now and it will come out very shortly. So yeah, stick around for analysis of chapter 3.